Ben from the Mindful Motorcycle, and today I wanted to talk about a trip I took to the local dealership to test ride Triumph motorcycles and experience new things. As you'll see from the accompanying video, we had a lead who was a representative from the dealership up at front, and there were a couple of us who were test riding motorcycles, as well as a trail behind who was a friend of the person who was riding in front of me. It brought up a bunch of thoughts for me, but mainly I wanted to address trying new things. And so I went out looking for resources to help me kind of put my thoughts together and call on some of the works of other great thinkers who've discussed this through line of trying new things, stepping into uncertainty, loosening the rigid identity that keeps us all psychologically safe. So let's gear up and see where it takes us. The bike that I'm on in this video is the 2026 Triumph Speed Twin. There are two models to choose from, a 900 and a 1200, and this one was the 900. It was nice, it was light, it was flaky, it had some good grunt, that Triumph low grunt with a great power delivery across all the bandwidth, and it felt like it had some soul to it, which is really nice. Not that any of the bikes that I've ever ridden from Triumph don't feel like they have a soul, but this one in particular felt like it kind of matched my soul at the moment, though I do wish it had a little bit more power, so that 1200 is probably where I would end up. New experience defined, though. I've never been on this bike before. I'm coming from a 1200 Scrambler, so this is super different and super new. The pioneer of analytical psychology, Carl Jung, didn't really reframe his trying new things in a self-help sense. For him, it really required growth, confronting the unknown parts of yourself. A core Jungian idea is the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And I think that being out there on this motorcycle, trying it out for the first time, getting a sense of it, really kind of compounded my who I am in terms of the love for the freedom that motorcycles offer and the dynamic versatility that is available on them. Another of the quotes are, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And something for me about motorcycling has always really done that. The whole getting out there and just kind of letting your mind drift while you're on this machine has brought tremendous peace when I'm feeling chaotic. It has chaos in it, but somehow it always circles back when I bring my kind of focus back to what I'm doing on the bike. The implications of all of this is that staying fixed, i.e. like having an ego preservation, isn't really going to help us move through life. He often suggested that what we resist or avoid contains hidden energy for development, which is to say, if I was thoroughly attached to my current motorcycle, I might avoid or resist a change by getting on this new one, and thus, I wouldn't get to experience this pretty cool, raw, powerful thing. Some books or areas are Memories, Dreams, and Reflections by Carl Jung, or Modern Man in Search of a Soul. Another of my absolute favorite people to talk about and to listen to is Alan Watts. Watts spoke constantly about play, experimentation, and not gripping identity too tightly. Sound familiar? One of his recurring ideas is that life is more like music than a journey. You can definitely get music on a motorcycle. Between the wind noise, the cars riding by you, the exhaust notes, and kind of the rhythm of the whole experience definitely gives you a playful, almost music-like composition. The meaning is that it isn't about rigid achievement, right? The journey is more the goal when you're riding the bike as opposed to the destination. In order to get there, you have to be a participant and you have to fully experience what it is that you're going through. He warned against becoming psychologically frozen into a role or self-concept, which is to say maybe attaching yourself to one mechanism, i.e. motorcycle. And some of his relevant works, some of the greatest of his things, was The Wisdom of Insecurity and the book on the taboo against knowing who you are. Watts would likely say trying new things interrupts the illusion that you are a fixed thing, and I totally got the sense of interruption of my usual riding style and motorcycle in this Speed Twin 900, for sure. At the beginning of the day, I posted something, though I don't know if it actually landed, about the beginner's mind. And that's what I was going into it to do because I had never done this before. John Kabbat-Zinn approaches this trying new things in a similar fashion, the beginner's mind, and a non-judgmental awareness. The foundational principle of mindfulness that he teaches and practices is approaching experiences as if for the first time, which is what I was trying to do. It's a very Zen adjacent kind of curiosity over certainty, observation over control, presence over performance type of methodology. One of my favorite and most impactful readings that I've ever done was one of John Kabat-Zinn's books. I reference it often. Wherever you go, there you are. I first heard about this book on an interview with Rick Rubin with Jay Shetty, and read it, and it was tremendously impactful. I got a bunch of other readings coming up from it, along with motorcycle footage, so you will see that, and if you haven't already, check out other episodes. Next up, I'm going to discuss Pema Chodron, who's another one of my favorites, who speaks directly to uncertainty and discomfort. If you've checked out some of my content, you know that I often talk about how motorcyclists seek discomfort. We're few and far of those people who do that. Our vulnerability, our acceptance of the fact that we've chosen a path that exposes us to the elements, to other motorists, and road conditions. So, Pema Chodron's whole body of work basically says growth happens when certainty dissolves. If you avoid discomfort, you are essentially shrinking your life, and that openness requires vulnerability. This is all so directly correlated to motorcycling. It's almost like she was a rider. I don't know if she ever did, but it definitely sounds like maybe she could have been. On the idea of trying new things, she lets us know that only to the extent that we expose ourselves over and over to annihilation can that which is indestructible be found in us. Which is to say, every moment is essentially a living and a dying experience. Every moment we are in, we're alive, and every moment that passes is essentially a small death, right? And thankfully, things are changing moment to moment, or life would be a very painful experience. It already is painful enough. But this is just to say that as we move through moment to moment, there is annihilation, she says here, over and over again. And it gives us the opportunity to experience change, which can be painful at times. Another snippet from Pema Chodron is the most fundamental aggression to ourselves is to remain ignorant by not having the courage to look at ourselves honestly and gently. And this is a concept that I talk about all the time. Courage. Courage being afraid and doing it anyways. There's a lot to be afraid of, moving from your comfort zone of your own bike or vehicle or house or life and entering into or getting on to a different experience, just like changing motorcycles, especially if it's not yours. So being on this motorcycle, as you can see here, it's not like a easy, comfortable transition. It definitely takes courage, and to do so takes us out of our comfort zone. You'll hear a lot from me from Pema's When Things Fall Apart. I also regularly dive into How We Live is How We Die. which are both essentially studies on groundlessness and discomfort, which literally is what it's like riding a motorcycle without any ground beneath your feet and just rubber on the road, as well as life moving at the speed of whatever it is that you're ripping through and the uncertainty of what's coming next. Along the same lines, we have our friend Eckhart Tolle, who takes an angle that the ego wants predictability because it derives identity from the known. So I have this Triumph Scrambler 1200, and I have an identity that's attached to that. So my ego essentially wants me to stick to what it knows, this Triumph, this beautiful motorcycle that's got its quirks, and not get on this one that I'm on over here in the video. Because trying new things can interrupt compulsive thinking, weaken identification with the story of me, and bring me into presence, which my ego doesn't necessarily want, because it wants me ignorant. It wants me to let it drive and to not question the direction it's taking us. So he frequently discusses how psychological time and repetitive identity structures keep people asleep. In this case, by disrupting our regular, ongoing, daily, habitual momentum, if you will, we get to experience the new. We get to experience excitement, and that can be really uncomfortable for our ego, for ourselves. It's scary, for sure, but drawing on what we've talked about before, being afraid and doing it anyway is courageous, and if we didn't try new things, what would our lives be like? The Power of Now is Eckhart Tolle's most famous piece of work, and it was actually my entry into this kind of world of, I guess, spiritual self-help, spiritual exploration in the secular sense. Mine is all noted up and written in and beat up. And I've actually just restarted listening to him again on audio because it's just so good. That kind of brings us to the end of the thinkers that I wanted to touch base on. If you kind of want just like a generalized wrap-up, the shared thread among all of them on this trying new things is that you have the thinker, or the core idea about the new experience, is that Carl Jung talks about the unknown reveals the self, so you learn more about you the more unknown things you do. Alan Watts talked about identity should stay fluid and playful, which means don't just stay static on your single motorcycle or on your journey. Take a step off, see what happens, get playful, think fun about it. It's not so scary after all. John Kabbat-Zinn says to meet life with the beginner's mind and always kind of consider that every cup is most useful when it is not full. And so if you can empty your mind, just like an empty cup, you can fill it up over and over and over again, and everything is new and exciting. Pema talks about that growth lives inside of discomfort, which I certainly know about. I think that a lot of people can relate to pain being a chief motivator for change. Pema's all about that. Tolle talks about ego all the time, and that presence emerges beyond ego routines. So break up what you do regularly, like riding the same motorcycle, and go try a different one from time to time. Maybe your buddies, maybe your friends, maybe the guy down the street, maybe the gal. Just give it a try. But definitely shake it up from time to time is essentially what all of these folks are saying. You know, you can't be certain about anything, so get out and play. You'll find growth or kind of development inside of discomfort. You get to overcome obstacles, and you may find that you become substantially present beyond your egoic, as Eckhart Tolle would say, routines and habits by pushing beyond it and having to focus on something else. Ultimately, I loved this experience. It was fantastic riding the couple of motorcycles that I did, I was on the Speed Twin or Street Twin 900. I got to test ride a Bonneville T120, which is a 1200cc Bonneville, and that was really smooth and quite nice. I may splice some of the footage in from that experience. And I rode on a Speedmaster, which is an incredibly unique riding experience. It felt to me like I was kind of riding around on one of those scoot boards that I used to do when I was a little kid, where you like wiggle it because of just the handlebar position and the way that it wanted to turn. I love Triumph. I actually love all motorcycles, but this was the most kind of robust Triumph riding experience I've had so far, and it was very nice. It felt really refined and comfortable, and frankly, not too scary beyond the experience of just sheer trying something new. So if you're thinking about trying something new, if you're afraid, that's okay. If you do it anyways, you can find bravery, you can find courage, and maybe it will take you out of your routines and help you ultimately find mindfulness while riding, so that you can transfer that or translate that into other areas of your life. Until the next time, this has been from the Mindful Motorcycle, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation and look forward to talking to you soon.